This is the Wild Indiana Podcast, episode number 11. Hello and welcome to episode number 11 of the Wild Indiana Podcast. I'd like to thank you for joining me today with our guest, Indiana Conservation Officer Tony Mann, who's going to talk about a very timely subject, tree stand safety. I'm Brent Wheat, the publisher of WIldIndiana.com and the host of this podcast. Each week we're devoted to bringing you all the interesting people, places, and things happening in the Hoosier outdoors. First, I'd like to remind you that the Wild Indiana Podcast is brought to you by Renfro Productions and Lake Outdoors. Renfro Productions brings you the annual Indianapolis Boat, Sport, and Travel Show, along with the Indiana Deer, Turkey, and Waterfowl Expo, the Indiana Motorcycle Expo, and the Indianapolis Fall Boat and RV Show. You can find out more at renfroproductions.com. We are also sponsored by Lake Outdoors, an angler-focused taxidermy studio located in Montgomery County. If you finally landed that trophy fish and want to have a special display made to commemorate your catch, check out lakeoutdoors.com. With our housekeeping out of the way, let's get started. In today's episode, as the deer firearms season is fast approaching, we speak to Tony Mann, one of Indiana's leading experts on tree stand safety. Tony is a master conservation officer with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, a 27-year member of the Conservation Police Agency, and is the unofficial coordinator of tree stand safety for the Department of Natural Resources. When he's not working in the field on routine patrol, Mann collects data on tree stand accidents and is very active as a speaker, trying to educate hunters on how to play it safe when they climb in those tree stands to hunt. At the end of our talk, we also discuss some general safety issues for the upcoming season. Here's our interview with Indiana Conservation Officer Tony Mann on tree stand safety. Hey, Tony, are you there?
Yeah, we're there, Brent. How you doing this morning?
Doing great. How are you doing? Now, we've already talked, and I'm sitting safely at my desk at my little recording studio here, and you're not safely at your desk, are you?
No, I'm actually in my mobile desk this morning.
Well, it's beautiful and 70 where I'm sitting, but apparently it's not where you're sitting, right?
No, like I said, here in southwestern Indiana, it's a light and drizzle, cloudy, and a balmy 46.
So. There you go. Well, Tony is a master conservation officer with the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, and Tony is the go-to guy for tree stand safety with the Department of Natural Resources. So let's start out with the big question. How big of a problem is tree stand safety for deer hunters?
It's almost like it's a never-ending battle sometimes. It's not every week, but just about every week we're having somebody fall out of a tree stand and get hurt, unfortunately. So yeah. It's something that we deal with.
Yeah.
Not quite weekly, but I mean almost.
Sure. So how many accidents are there in an average or typical year, if there is such a thing?
Well, there's no rhyme or reason. They kind of go up and down.
Uh-huh.
Last year, for example, I recorded 27 tree stand incidents for the state of Indiana.
Yeah.
And as of last night, ironically, we are up to 15 this year already. So,
really?
Of course, with firearm season coming up, there's a lot more people out during firearm season, so we have a couple more during that time. But
what is it? What happened, or what is your interest in tree stand safety?
I've been a lifelong hunter. Began hunting at tree stands at an early age, so I've been experienced, and I've probably made, as well as anybody else, we've kind of made the same. If we've hunted at a tree stand, I can honestly say I have never fallen.
Yeah.
I have.
But you've had a few.
Ride.
Yeah. I'm raising my hand on that one.
Back in the early days of the earlier climbing tree stands, rode the bark, so to speak.
Yeah.
And just through the job, as a conservation officer, part of our job is to investigate hunting incidents. And then from that, I just kind of started following the incidents that occurred throughout the state. And with our record-keeping system that our department uses, I'm able to go back, search the different reports on the different incidents throughout the state, and then see if there's anything that, just stands out.
Right.
Causes, of course, the main cause of all of them is that they're not wearing a full-body harness, which
exactly.
If they would have been attached, they wouldn't have hit the ground in the first place. But,
yep.
That's that's kind of a no-brainer. But just to look at the different other causes, and then with that information, with our hunter education section here in the division, we get those critiques or synopsis of all the incidents, and then we get those out to our volunteer instructors that help us with hunter education, and then they can use those. It kind of puts more of a personal thing, instead of just like reading from the book when you're talking about tree stand safety, you start talking about these incidents that occurred right here in Indiana.
Yep.
And some of them, we don't never want to put, somebody on the spot, but, if it's a close to home, or sometimes if it's a person somebody might know,
Yep.
it kind of puts a personal feel on it, and maybe they pay a little bit closer. Of course, we don't use names or,
sure.
But if you knew your hunting buddy fell out of a ladder stand last year, and I'm talking about a ladder stand, and it's one of those deals that if you know the person involved, well, you kind of know the story as well, so.
Let's look at your average tree stand accident. What is the most common cause of the accident?
Looking at just going over last year's, most of those were when they climb up into the stand, either if you're familiar with a fixed position or hang on, lock on stand, whatever you want to call it, you have one or two ratchet straps that attaches the platform to the tree.
Right.
When you leave that in a tree over a period of time, obviously, of course, the tree is growing.
Yeah.
So it's stretching on that nylon strap. The weathering, the sunlight, deterioration from the UV rays. Then you throw in a squirrel or a critter chewing on them every now and again. So that was, we've seen that on several of the incidents last year where the straps just failed.
Yeah.
You step off your climbing aid, whatever it would be, onto the stand, and the straps fail, and you go for a ride that way.
Yep.
Also, along that same line, the cable, I think there was two of them last year. If my memory serves me correct, that how you have the cable that from the upright portion that attaches to the tree to the platform, the little cables, that they actually rusted where they connect to the stand.
Yeah.
The cable, they're usually like a lead crimp, on cable. You know how cables work.
Yeah.
The cable actually rusted and failed. So, although the stand was attached to the tree with the ratchet straps, the cables fell, so the platform gave way.
Yeah.
And it's just the bottom, literally the bottom falling out from underneath you.
So basically, mechanical failure, probably brought on by neglect or inattention to proper maintenance.
Yep.
But the one thing that can save you in that situation is a tree stand safety harness, and that's something that
full body harness and line.
Yeah. So talk about harnesses, because I've gone the full gamut. When I first started hunting, you couldn't even buy a tree stand harness, and then I got pretty. I was trained in rappelling, so I was a radical, because I wore a hand-tied Swiss seat up in the tree, and I don't know if that had felt very good if I had fallen, but now we fast forward to 2017, and you've got really nice full body harnesses. So I've been the full gamut. So talk about safety harnesses.
On your full body harnesses, any stand, pretty well any quality stand that you purchase today comes with a full body harness. Like the one incident that I was reviewing from this season, the guy took the stand out of the box, took the stand back in the woods. The harness is still in the package in the back of the truck.
Oh.
But the one, they're not, and I'll admit that they're not the best user friendly, I guess would be the word.
Sure.
Because of the straps and buckles and stuff. But they will work if you use them, and you get a complaint that they're a wadded up mess. Well, if you take just a little bit of patience and work through it and find the straps and do it the right way, they're usable, and they're usable to the extent that they could save your life or injury.
Yeah.
But guys just don't use them. And then, like you said, now fast forward to 2017, there's several good hunter safety systems, Muddy, a lot of your Treestand, Summit.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of those companies actually have better than the one in the bag that comes with the stand.
Yeah.
You know? But of course, there's going to be some cost with that.
Sure.
You know, the hunter safety system vest, you know, that can be $150, you know, on up, you know, or cheaper, you know, depending on which model. You know, it's just like when buying a car. If you get these belt, you know, you get the stripped down model, and then you get all the you know, just like buying a car. But then I always, when I'm doing a class teaching, you know, I'll even throw that out there that, well, no, I don't like this harness, you know, that comes with it. But man, I don't want to spend $150 to buy the next you know, go to the next level.
Yeah.
Well, then I throw the question at you: how much is your life worth?
Exactly.
You know, how much is, you know, if you can spend $150 to purchase this better harness that you'll more likely to use and wear. If you just use the $150, for example.
Yep.
Okay. If you don't wear that harness like you should from the time you leave the ground to the time you return to the ground, and because it's uncomfortable or whatever, if you don't wear it and you fall out, how much is that going to cost you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay, an ambulance ride alone from the scene to the hospital, $5,000.
Yep.
Okay, then you got your ER bills, and then you're, you know, in bad enough shape that life flight, you know, you get a life flight,
Yeah.
you know, helicopter ride to a major, you know, a bigger trauma, you know, depending on where you're at. But, you know, a helicopter ride, for example, to a major trauma center. Okay, so that's, you know, how much is the helicopter trip? That's $50,000.
Yeah, a lot of money.
You know, so you look at the big picture, you can run, you know, then your hospital stay and intensive care and therapy and loss of wages and work, and, you know, God forbid you know, heck, you lose your life. You know? Well, how much is, you compare that, $150 is a pretty good investment.
Pretty good investment, exactly.
$500,000.
You know, and my next question was going to be talking about the accidents you've investigated, but I really think to make it more personal, talk about some of the injuries you've seen. You know, because people, okay, we know we fall out of a tree and we hit a large planet, you know, at a fairly high speed, you're going to be injured or possibly killed. But talk about actually what happens.
It's the sudden stop.
Exactly.
It's not the fall that hurts. It's the sudden stop at the bottom. Like the one I was just reviewing, the guy actually had taken a stepladder to assist in installing the tree stand. Okay, that's not a bad idea. But when he gets it up there and he's trying to readjust, it fails and he goes falling down. Not only, you know, if the falling down wasn't bad, he actually bounced off the stepladder he had to assist him in the first place.
Yeah.
But a lot of the injuries that you see are, of course, broken legs, feet, you know, ankles, or, you know, those are kind of the easy ones. Sometimes it's the cervical ones where you. Like the one I had the other day, 5 of his transverse processes were fractured when he landed on his back. Oh,
my. Odds are you're never going to be the same after an injury like that.
And unfortunately, that's what this, you know, in talking with this guy, you know, a week later, when I re-talked to him, he had been released from the hospital, went to see his regular doctor, and then was actually forwarded to a spine specialist to follow up, because he's going to have, and this was a fairly young guy, so unfortunately, you know, he's, you know, by the time he gets our age, you know, he's going to wake up with a stiff back every morning. You know how that goes.
Absolutely.
But you know, that's the worst ones are the back, the spine injuries. I can honestly say I've never had one. I've never not been dealt with one where, you know, a guy was paralyzed.
But
I
it
have
happens.
Investigated. Yeah. I have personally investigated some fatals. You know, and so, but this seems like the you know, I don't know, you really can't rank them. Mm-hmm. Your leg and foot injuries, it all depends on how you fall. You get that sudden stop. The leg and foot injuries, the spinal ribs.
Yeah.
Let alone the internal injuries that occur. You'll see bruised liver, bruised internal organs, liver spine, your liver, lungs, heart, spleen, or if you hit hard enough, you can lacerate your liver or spleen, things like that.
Hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's not the fall, it's that sudden stop at the bottom.
Well, it's almost like being in a bad car accident. I mean, you're going that fast and you're stopping that sudden.
Yeah, that's kind of a valid comparison.
So one of the things that I do hear from people occasionally is with the harnesses. Oh, I don't want to wear one. I'll get the rope around my neck, or I'll hang upside down in the tree. Are people ever injured by the harnesses?
Not to my knowledge.
Okay, that's like an old wives' tale kind of thing.
But you can suffer from suspension trauma if you look at any harness systems that are out there now. They come with a suspension relief strap as well.
Right.
What happens is if you're hanging there, the straps there on your inner thighs, cuts off the blood flow, that big femoral.
Yeah.
And so you have a short amount of time. If that blood ain't circulating like it's supposed to, then you can get into trouble as well.
Yeah.
However, any quality harness system comes with that suspension relief.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then if you do not have that suspension relief, like if you, they suggest if you as you're hanging there till that your friends get there to help you, or rescue or EMS or whatever, bicycling your legs or pushing off the tree with your legs to try to keep that blood flowing.
Good point.
So yes, I mean, in wearing a foot, there is that, I guess if you want to call it, there's that caveat there. Even if you're wearing a full body harness, there can be trouble, or whatever term you want to use. But and that's one thing that we preach as well, is practice at ground level.
Good point.
So climbing up, don't climb up in a 20-foot stand and bonsai off of it and see if your harness is going to work. But
if you do, call Wild Indiana so we can video it and then call the medics afterwards.
Yeah. Practice at ground level. Put your platform up at a reasonable, rescuable, I guess if that's a word.
Yeah.
Height, in which you can test. We don't recommend putting an entire load on the system.
Right.
But if you just put a shock load.
Yeah.
But if you just ease into it and then figure out how to remount the platform, if you just fall off the platform, for example, hanging off the side of the tree, to remount the stand or the climbing aid or whatever you're using, practice that at ground level with assistance. Don't just do it yourself and get into trouble. But that's one thing that we recommend for people to do, is just that. Practice at ground level. Don't go out at Cabela's, Friday night and buy the stand and harness.
Which some of us have been guilty of over the years.
Then go out opening morning and Saturday morning and put all that stuff to use. We recommend using it. And a thing that people don't think of as well as, say you're putting up your stands, put the thing of putting up stands, you do it early, nice weather,
right?
It's warm, you're in a t-shirt and jeans. When you're actually going deer hunting, depending on Mother Nature at the time, but how that goes, but you're out there in deer season in coveralls and bulky clothes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So although you might look kind of goofy to your neighbor, but you need to practice in the clothes that you hunt in as well, because that can add some different parameters of movement and whatnot.
Yeah.
When you got, just the freedom of movement and climbing or what have you.
Yep.
So not only do we recommend to practice at ground level, also practice with your full gear on too, so to speak, your hunting clothes, boot. Think of it this way: climbing with your super polar insulated hunting boots compared to a pair of tennis shoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Things like that.
Now, something you told me years ago that stuck with me and really amazed me, and it truly, and because it was one of those things, it made total sense, and I'd never thought about it. Most accidents come at the end of the hunt when guys are trying to get down.
Yeah, you see a lot of them getting in or getting out, that transition.
Yeah,
a couple of them already this year. We got one of each actually in the 15 this year.
Huh.
The one was a fellow was climbing in, and in the transition, of course, wasn't attached, so that's the no-brainer. But used a vine as a handhold to transition from the ladder to the homemade ladder to the climbing stand.
Yeah.
So you can get a mental picture of that.
Yeah.
But, it was a cooler weekend we had, and had a gloved hand. So when it's unclear whether his gloved hand altered his ability to grip the vine or whether the vine actually gave way. I don't think the officer ever came to a conclusion with that, but that was an example of getting in, transitioning from the climbing aid to the stand, where the guy fell, and then the exact opposite, the guy getting out. And again, it was a fixed position with a climbing aid, and somehow used a branch to transfer from the platform to the ladder.
Uh-huh.
And of course, you can imagine when they stepped on the branch,
Yep.
guess what?
Yep.
Branch broke, and down we go. And again, it's not the fall; it's the sudden stop at the bottom.
Exactly.
So, but a lot of our incidents occur, going up, going down, getting in, getting out.
Yep. Now, one of my pet peeves is, I've been a shooting guy, a gun rider, a shooting instructor, all that. My big pet peeve is gun handling and firearm safety.
Yes.
And that's something that I see violated, and I may have done it once or twice, but hauling up your gun and your bow. Talk a little bit or a lot about that.
Of course, we advocate the use of a haul line to pull your equipment up into the stand to you. Never climb with something in your hand. Mm-hmm. You always want to maintain at least 3 points of contact while you're climbing, whether it be two hands or do the math. You got 2 hands, 2 feet, that's 4. Your lifeline is 5. Mm-hmm. We always want to maintain at least 3, so you got 2 hands and a foot, because you can picture that going up. You have to let go sometimes to make progress, right? But one of the incidents again already this year, ladder stand, the guy used a haul line to pull his bow up. However, the cushion, which I can say, you can think about, because we do some of these things ourselves. Yeah, I don't leave my cushion in the ladder stand. Right. You don't leave that big foam cushion, because if it does rain and you sit on it, it's a big wet sponge, right? Yeah. So I get it, taking your cushion in and out with you. However, he climbed with the cushion in his hand. Ah. And in climbing up the ladder, having the big cushion, that big 3-foot cushion, you can imagine, wasn't very conducive to climbing up a ladder for whatever reason. Of course, he lost handheld and fell off the ladder. 2 of the incidents last year, if we can go back to last year's actual incidents that happened last year, one was a young girl was climbing up with a single shotgun with it, not using a haul line, holding the gun, trying to climb the stand with her gun in her hand, basically. Drops the gun, and the gun actually hits the ladder on the hammer and goes off and shoots her in the arm. Oh, my goodness. And then the other one was the guy, instead of using a haul line in transitioning from the stand to the screw-in steps, hung the gun on the screw-in step and, of course, bumps it. And when it transverses, it pulls the trigger and shoots him in the leg. Oh, my goodness. Just kind of silly stuff like that. And that goes back to firearm safety 101. Anytime you're doing something, you unload the gun.
That part I've never shortcutted. And I see my friends do it all the time. Well, the safety's on. Well, the safety is just a mechanical device, and especially if you have something with an external hammer, guns can go off. They generally don't. They do what they're designed to do, but they're not designed to be dropped or hit on a tree stand, or it just doesn't make good sense to me. It just takes a few seconds to get it loaded when you're up there, and the noise is not that great anyway. So that's the thing I hear from folks, especially with like a pump shotgun or something like that, is, well, the noise will scare the deer. Well, maybe you'll scare a deer, or maybe you end up killing yourself if you drop the gun as you're climbing the stand. So it's a pretty simple equation there to me, but I'll get off my soapbox on that particular one.
Well, and that's that's where we at. And that's, like you said, that's firearm safety 101, tree stand safety 101. Use a haul line, unload, make safe before you pull it up to you. Because I can remember back many moons ago when we used to run around together. The one in an area north of us where the kid actually pulling the loaded gun up to him and activated the hammer, and that actually killed that little boy that time.
Wow! I don't remember that one myself, but
long time ago.
So, what about hunting in high wind or snow? I've done it and it scares me to death, but what's the official recommendation there?
Again, you want to do what's safe. If we go back to Tree Stand 101, things to think about when picking a place for a tree to install an elevated hunting platform of any type, is you look at your surroundings. Look at the tree you're using, of course. Look at that tree, make sure it's a viable tree. It's a live tree. It's the proper type tree, because depending on the type of stand that you use, the bark, you don't want to try to go up use a climbing stand in a shag bark hickory tree.
Yeah.
Or put a stand in a black locust.
Yeah.
You pick the proper tree, proper size tree. With that, we mean if there's something like, don't put it in a tree so big that you can't get your arms around it. If you understand what I'm saying.
Yeah.
If you would get into trouble, if you can't, do some type of self-rescue because the tree's too big and you can't hold, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You're just done.
Think about that. Make sure that, like I said, it's a live, viable tree, which includes, looking above you, make sure there's no dead limbs, things like that. And then take it a step further, look around your stand site, make sure there's not a dead, something, a dead tree or something that would, in like you said, high winds. One of our volunteer instructors that teaches with me a lot, talks about the time where he had his ladder stand in the tree. Didn't think much about a dead tree being fairly close to his stand. A windstorm that night. Guess what? The next morning comes in to find his stand smashed by the dead tree.
Oh my!
What if that would have been? That could have been a whole bad.
Yeah, your safety line's not going to help you on that one.
Yeah. So so be aware when picking your stand site. With the snow question, again, be aware what snow and ice can do to the steps. Of course, if we advocate using the safety line, lifeline, whatever you want to call it, with the prusik attaching before you leave the ground, that's going to help in a lot of ways. But last year, as a matter of fact, in 2016, the very first tree stand incident that occurred was a young lady was climbing a ladder stand, slipped off the steps and got hurt because of the frost or ice on the steps. So that's why we advocate check your equipment, check your stuff, be aware, don't get in a hurry, because that's the thing that gets a lot of people in trouble.
Yeah,
is just flat out, like you said, taking shortcuts, not unloading the gun. Like we already talked about, getting in a hurry. And end up getting hurt, taking shortcuts, getting in a hurry, and end up getting hurt because of something silly. Take your time, slow down, and do it right.
Is there any other points on tree stand safety that we haven't hit that you wanted to highlight?
we advocate not using the homemade stuff so much, because if you picture the classic old homemade stand, you nail boards up the side of the tree and then nail the board across the fork of the tree.
Yep.
The boards rot, the screws rust, critters chew on it, and it's just like we talked earlier. You use that stand. I've killed a deer out of that every opening morning for the last 20 years. That's my stand, and lack of repair gets people into trouble on using homemade stuff. And again, your homemade stuff doesn't come with a full body harness. Doesn't come with a instructional video to properly install and use it. Where your commercial made ones, come with that.
Yeah.
And face it, with today's lumber prices,
good point.
You can go out and buy a quality stand that comes with a full body harness to keep you safe, comes with an instructional DVD to properly put it together, install and use it to keep you safe. Well, your homemade stand, you by the time you buy lumber, and your time's worth something, by the time you build one, buy the lumber and the parts and stuff to build one, you could have already had a pre-made one up already.
Absolutely. I was hunting with a friend. It was one of those, hey, you want to go to my great spot tomorrow? I'm sure. So he said, I'm going to give you the best stand, and it's been up there, the same kind of deal. We've killed a big deer out of that stand every year, and it's just the place of honor, so you get to hunt there. I'm like, cool. So I get there, and it's dark, but I'm using, they've got screw-in tree steps, and I'm getting up to the stand, and it's like, this thing was probably put in the tree by Daniel Boone, and the squirrels had used it for a tooth and gum exerciser, and it's like, and there was that moment where you got to make the decision. It's like, it's going to be daybreak here pretty soon. I need to get up in this stand, but this thing just looks like death. I mean, it's got death written on it. Yeah. And so what I ended up doing, I ended up setting at the base of the tree, and I never saw a deer that day, but I didn't tell my my friend that I just didn't dare hunt out of that stand because I'm kind of allergic to dying, and it wasn't a real high stand, but it just didn't look like something I wanted to be standing 15 feet above the ground on this rotted platform in the fork of a tree. So it was one of those, and I think they hunted out of it a couple more years and nothing ever happened, but I just had to make that decision at the time, and I don't really regret it because the cost benefit analysis at that moment, I could have gained a little bit by shooting a deer, or I could have lost an awful lot by that stupid stand collapsing. So, just good decision making, I think, is pretty important for hunters.
like those sayings says, a little common sense goes a long way.
Absolutely. Let's get away from tree stands. It's a great topic, and you've talked about a lot of good stuff that hopefully people can take into consideration when they're climbing. Let's talk about the upcoming firearms deer season from a conservation officer standpoint. That is something, you guys are really busy. What is the probably the most common violation that you see during gun season?
Common violations, and it kind of goes with any, is here in Indiana is a lot of it is the baiting.
Ah, okay. I thought you were going to say trespassing, but baiting?
Baiting, I'd almost go baiting number one, hunting without consent, trespass, probably maybe number two.
Yeah.
But the baiting thing is, we get so many cases with baiting issues. Talk
about what baiting is, and because there's so many products on the market now. I mean, are we talking guys hunting over a couple bushels of corn? Or are we talking guys that are using products that are widely available but might not be legal in our state?
Yes, exactly. You see both from the commercial products, whether it be your liquids or powders, granular, to the old-fashioned salt block, and you even got the ones, the trophy rocks, the mineral
that look like a rock,
things, to the having the barrel feeders that actually putting out cracked corn, a food source. You see it all. To the pile, like you said, the pile of corn. I've actually had in my career, a guy had a pile of apples. There wasn't an apple tree around.
Wow.
It's leave it to your imagination that what guys will do.
Well, talk about the what's the dividing line? I mean, most guys can figure out a bushel of corn is baiting, but talk about this stuff that they're selling at darn near every outdoor retailer.
Yeah. Like I said, grow a food plot. Grow the food, but you can't take the food there. So anything that you're taking in that's a food source, mineral source, that's going to be an attractant to the game, it's illegal in Indiana.
Now, I was told years ago, and this may be correct or not, so I'm asking the question, I don't know the answer, is if the deer can consume it, it is illegal. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that'd be a good analogy.
Okay.
Yes. And some states have actually, which that's a whole nother topic, but the CWD stuff that for as urine scents and things like that, there are some states that have went and made those illegal because of the CWD stuff and urine and things like that. And that's a whole nother. But yeah, if they can, they can eat it, ingest it. I guess that'd be kind of a good rule of thumb, probably.
Yeah. Now, safety is important in everything we do, and certainly important when we're walking around the woods with guns. Talk about some of the hunting accidents every year, deer season. There's a few tragedies, unfortunately. Last year was actually kind of unusual in that everybody was talking with the rifle law that, we're going to have hunters shot in every corner of the state. And it turned out there was nobody shot by rifles, but unfortunately there were some other accidents. Talk about just some of the things you've seen as a conservation officer and more importantly, how people can make themselves safe from especially gunfire.
On the gun, I guess the biggest thing on the gun stuff is failure to identify your target. So that I guess that'd be the main thing that we want to talk about on trying to curtail firearms related incidents is properly identifying your target and then swinging on game. We've actually we think about the bird hunters.
Yeah.
Maintain your zone of fire, know where everybody in your hunting party is at.
Yeah.
Because we've had, that was one of the incidents last year where the guy got sprayed by pellets from his own hunting party. When they was bird hunting. And
deer season is failure to wear hunter orange. Is that a cause very often, or is it just guys shooting and not paying any attention to which direction they're shooting?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes, and that just goes along with the failure to identify. You think of, depending on the situation where the guy just had on an orange hat, but the guy could, seen movement, didn't see just the orange hat. An orange hat meets the requirements.
Sure.
But, depending on the situation, you may want to wear more than just the minimum.
Yeah.
So, like I said, that just goes back to properly identifying your target.
Yeah.
Because there's, not a deer that's going to have any orange on that.
Yeah.
Things like that,
Well, I used to hunt in Park County years ago, and we had a great hunting spot. But not only did you hear gunfire starting about 45 minutes before legal shooting time, it was flat dark and people were shooting. But then I hear people cranking off, in one case, probably about 8 rounds. They had to have an extended tube on their shotgun at that point. It was only shotguns. And they're cranking these rounds, and there's no way, if a guy's banging out that many rounds at a deer that's fleeing, that he's paying any attention whatsoever to what's around that deer or maybe his buddy that just popped up over the ridgeline. So it got scary down there sometimes.
And then you think about, being an ethical, responsible hunter to do that spray and pray thing.
Exactly.
Like you're talking
That's
about.
Another pet peeve of mine.
We advocate, properly identify your target. You want to make sure that the shot you're going to take is going to result in a quick, clean harvest of that animal.
Absolutely.
And if you're, unless you're a trained shooter like yourself, not many guys can make that 1,000-yard shot on a run now.
Yeah, which turned out to be 150 yards anyway. But
looking at the reports from last year, most of them were actually going back to what we already talked about, were self-inflicted.
Oh, really?
Due to unsafe firearms handling. Firearm Safety 101.
Well, because folks were never properly taught or never took to heart, the firearm safety rules. And, in my training, I work more in the defensive firearms industry, but obviously I'm a very avid hunter. But there's four safety rules that were originally brought forth by Colonel Jeff Cooper, who's the inventor of the modern technique of the pistol. And rule number 1 is all guns are always loaded. That's pretty simple. All guns are always loaded. And I hate going to gun shows because you get guns pointed at you, and if you ever say anything, well, it's unloaded. Well, I've not personally checked the chamber, neither have you, because most folks don't do that.
You can just keep our basic, which we teach on our hunter ed classes, your 3 basic rules. Mm-hmm. Think about it this way: muzzle control. Mm-hmm. No, and you just kind of touched on that. Your gun shows, muzzles flying around everywhere, everybody waving their wares around.
Yep.
Muzzle control. Treat every gun as if it was loaded, and know your target. Yeah. If you just live by those 3 basic rules, you're going to you're going to go far. It just boils down to the basic firearm safety, and like I said, a lot of times it's people just get excited. Whether it's the heat of the moment, getting excited over that trophy deer in front of them or what have you, do silly things like. One time, a retired officer told me one time that the most normal person will do some of the stupidest stuff in that 2 weeks of deer firearms.
Absolutely.
For nothing but an old deer.
Yep, exactly. Well, that's good stuff, and we've kind of walked all through the woods to talk about tree stand safety and general firearms and hunting safety. So good words of advice from a 27-year veteran, Master Conservation Officer Tony Mann. So I assume you have to work opening day of deer season?
Oh, yeah. It's always a festive day.
Well, for those of us that are retired, I feel your pain. I'm actually going to be in Missouri hunting on their deer season, so that'll be fun. But anyway, thanks for talking to us about this stuff. How can folks learn more information from like the DNR about tree stand safety?
You can go to our website at the DNR. IDNR, and then click on the law enforcement division and cruise the various YouTube links and things on our safety stuff. So
perfect.
There's just all different kinds of in today's modern media, you can Google it. Exactly. Well, Tony, thanks for talking to us. We don't want to keep any longer because I know you want to get back out in that 40-degree drizzle, but keep up the good work and stay safe out there. You're going to have a challenging time the next couple of weeks, but our men and women in green across the state, sometimes folks don't like to see them around, but they're a pretty darn important part of keeping our resources and our outdoor users safe. So kudos to you and your fellow brother and sister officers, and we hope that you stay safe, and we will talk some more in the future. Appreciate the opportunity to talk safety with you, and hope to talk to you soon and have a good season.
Sounds good.
All right, Brent. Thank you.
That was our interview with Indiana Conservation Officer Tony Mann, and he shared lots of great information about staying safe while hunting, regardless if you're on the ground or in a tree. That wraps it up for this episode of the Wild Indiana podcast. Please visit us daily at WIldIndiana.com, and you can also follow us on Facebook at /WildIndiana. You can also check out our Twitter feed at WildIndianaMag, or subscribe to our YouTube channel at Wild Indiana Video. I hope you've enjoyed this episode and will give tree stand safety a little more consideration during this year's deer season. That's it for now. I'm Brent Wheat, publisher of Wild Indiana. Now go outside and do something.